High Priestess. Ah, the High Priestess. So in the High Priestess, again, with the numbers, just the numbers themselves are almost a symbol on their own, the Roman numerals. So the 2 here is like the 2 pillars that the High Priestess traditionally sits between. At the same time, we kind of have the 2 sides of the card, the black on either side of the card, and so those are also like 2 pillars. In the Waite Smith depiction, and I think in many Golden Dawn depictions, the system that sprang from the Golden Dawn, the High Priestess sits between a black pillar and a white pillar, signifying the left and right pillars on the Tree of Life, the dark and the light. But it's not always been that way, and in not every card since then is it that way. Sometimes the 2 pillars are both light or both dark, and really light and dark depend on our perception. In a lot of ways, there's no such thing as an absolute white or an absolute black, an absolute light or an absolute dark. They're relative. Something that is blindingly light can cause something that is colorless, white, to appear black. And something that's very, 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 very dark can appear light or even white to our perception when placed next to something that's incredibly subjectively more dark than that. So the pillars are both kind of just in the Roman numeral, but also on either side and carried through into the borders, where the black pillar kind of exists there. And then the light is coming down through the pillars, through the 2, into the space between the 2 parts of the High Priestess. About those 2 circles that intersect, when the edge of one circle reaches the center of another circle, and 2 circles intersect, we get the Vesic Pisces. And the interesting thing, there's many things, one of the interesting things about the Vesic Pisces is that the proportion between the width of the shape and the height of the shape is again that 1.618 golden ratio number. That's the proportion in the Vesic Pisces. So in the 2, we're actually seeing that manifestation number come up again. And we have, in that intersection, we have the void showing up in between 2. That's not really a traditional part of the symbology necessarily, so I will talk a little bit about the traditional part of the symbology, excuse me, which is the merging of opposites as part of the 2. And in the High Priestess card, she sits in front of the veil. The veil has pomegranates on it. She wears a crown, sometimes a crown of a lunar crown showing the phases of the moon. Sometimes she's got her foot on the moon as well. And often the High Priestess is seen actually as the moon card, whereas the moon card is seen as something else. Astrologically, I think it's Pisces. I don't remember. Astrology is not my thing really, but I see it often enough that it still sinks in. And so, but anyway, the High Priestess is really the moon card, and so there's a lot of lunar symbology in her. And again, about the moon and the moon cycles, it's really all about perception. So when we experience the moon as being full or quarter or new, it's really just the moon's relationship to the earth and the sun, and how we perceive that relationship that makes the moon appear to us to be full or quarter or new or along the way, all the other phases. So it's all about appearance and perception. So anyway, the moon, the blue crescent is my depiction of the lunar side of the High Priestess. Again, and also associated with water. The moon and water are linked. The tides, the moon controls the tides, and I don't have to explain that relationship between the moon and water to you all. I'm sure you probably know it. But also the symbolic intuition and subconscious side of lunar symbology and water symbology. The High Priestess also traditionally sits not just in front of the veil, but in front of the veil, behind the veil, there's a body of water. And we're not really sure what that body of water is just by the card. It could just be, it could be a river, it could be a lake, it could be the ocean, and it could just be, again, a symbol of water, a symbol of a body of water that has vastness, like the ocean of the universe, the ocean of the unconscious. All of these kind of grander ideas. Or it could just be something, a simple, shallow, wide, but shallow puddle that allows for reflection back and appears to be really deep and has depth in it. We create depth in it, and yet it's actually just a puddle on a shallow surface. So perception, and then the second half, that could also be a crescent moon. It could be a lunar shape. The moon certainly turns red on rare occasions when we have a lunar eclipse. When we have a lunar eclipse, of course, the moon is full. It's actually not possible to have a lunar eclipse without a full moon, because of the way that's the way that the Earth, the eclipse happens because the Earth is between the moon and the sun, and the moon is only full when the moon is on the other side of the sun. The only reason why we don't have full eclipses every full moon is because the moon is off on the alignment just enough that the Earth doesn't really obstruct the light coming from the sun to the moon. So anyway, but with lunar eclipses, even though the moon is always full, sometimes we get partial lunar eclipses, which create a partial red moon. But that's kind of an exception. More so, this red shape, which it's fire, the element is fire, but this red shape reminds me of the pomegranates that are on the High Priestess's veil. So it's the pomegranate symbol combined with the lunar symbol, and as they merge, they create a veil. They again, with perception, they are not necessarily intersecting. They could be far away from each other, like so, right? But just because of where our vantage point is where they're intersecting. And yet from another vantage point, they could not be interacting really at all. And they could almost be intersecting. It could be very, very close. But there's a tiny veil, there's a thin veil in between the two. And that if we can enter that veil, it can open up. It's also, again, that split in manifestation, between manifestation and the void. So it's just another shade of the same thing. And the last thing I'll say about the High Priestess is that within all twos, and I think I talked about this in my number cycles video, is that in all twos, there's always a hint of a third. There's always another little piece of three hidden inside. You can't have duality without having trinity, because just automatically in the split, and automatically in creating one opposite, one side of the continuum, and the other side of the continuum. There's automatically a middle. Or there's automatically a space in between. Even if they're not linked, there's automatically a third thing. And so that's in the center in the Vesica Pisces. And that third thing then gives birth to something new, the Empress.